Just as we say that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, you really shouldn't judge an anime by its opening. Because if you were to judge Guild Receptionist just based off of what you see in the opening, you would think that you're getting an entirely different story than what you actually get once you start watching the show. And yet, despite that, Guild Receptionist is a really, really fun story and a great example of how to do overpowered characters correctly, which was a whole lot of fun to see. And also how you can take a lot of tired and true tropes and twist them around just a little bit, apply them just slightly differently in order to deliver a really unique and entertaining story. And so that is why I am here today with a special recommendation for Guild Receptionist, brought to you by Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers, because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. Now, Guild Receptionist is a very straightforward story. You've got this receptionist who is just absolutely overworked because all the adventurers are trying to defeat these different dungeons. They're not doing it on time, and they keep coming back, filling out more and more files and reports, and she's got to log it all away. She's got to do all this stuff. To be quite honest, I'm actually a little bit confused why she has to do so much paperwork, but that is a video and a rant for another time. But she is so overworked, she's not been able to clock out on time for months, and she's losing her sleep, losing her sanity, that she decides, you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to defeat the final boss myself. I'm going to completely clear out this dungeon. And she does. Disguising herself and going around with this crazy god-killing hammer, she clears the dungeon overnight, and the most powerful party of adventurers witnesses this, and they're like, what the heck? And their leader's like, I must find this woman. And so he does, and quickly discovers it's the Guild Receptionist. She is the OP character with the hammer. I'm gonna date this gal. Now, it's not so easy as all of that, because despite the fact that she's got all these amazing powers and she cleared out the dungeon, well, there's still amount of paperwork left for her. She now has to deal with the advances of this party leader, as well as the others from the guild who are trying to get in on her secret to figure out what exactly she's doing with her personal life. And on top of that, there's still more dungeons left to clear and a conspiracy floating above it all, pulling all the strings. And what I love about this is how, well, this is overpowered characters done right, because even though the receptionist has this amazing god-killing hammer, she can kill almost anything with a single stroke of this crazy maul thingy, that does not help her out one iota with all of the paperwork. And even with her amazing powers, she can't force people to be good. So when you've got bad adventurers coming around giving her lip, she can't simply just beat the snot out of them, because that doesn't exactly change them, because those same guys go on later on and do even dumber things to try to get revenge, which just makes her life even more miserable. And even though she has these amazing OP powers, there are other people as well who figure out that they can acquire similar powers as well if they consult the dark arts. So what exactly then is overpowered? One thing to understand when it comes to overpowered characters is that they should always be overpowered in comparison to the other characters within their story. Be like the same where you compare just your regular jogger against an Olympic athlete. Your regular jogger on the street will never beat Usain Bolt in a sprinting match, because Usain Bolt is just a completely different person altogether, as well as every other Olympian. Regular joggers just cannot compete. That means that Olympians are OP compared to us regular humans. That is how overpowered should be. Well, too many people think of overpowered as just simply that they can just crush, banish, smash anything with just a single flick of the finger, kind of like with Saitama from One Punch Man. One Punch Man is taking that idea to ridiculous levels, and even One Punch Man shows that Saitama is still depressed despite all of his powers. His great strength did not bring him any satisfaction or happiness. It is what he does with those powers, more specifically, the friends he makes while trying to be a hero, that brings him any sort of satisfaction and happiness. And it's the same with the guild receptionist. And we get a really neat arc for her where we get to learn what actually motivated her to take on this horrible job, why she does what she does, her tragic backstory that led her to acquiring these kinds of powers, but then realizing that the powers in and of themselves are not enough to achieve her dream. It is, again, what exactly she does with those powers in order to help other people. And by the end of the story, we get to see her growing as a person, getting closer with others, and learning to smile and not take herself too seriously, while still having to deal with an absolute mountain of paperwork because, again, she can't just simply smash all that stuff away. It has to be legally and properly filed. Again, I'm going to have a video out later about why this funny representation of adventuring guilds is actually really far off the mark, but that's going to require a little bit more work. But coming back to it, it's great to see an OP character having to still struggle with things that they just can't simply punch their way through. This gives them challenges that teases out character arcs, that allows them to develop relationships, meaningful relationships with other characters. And Guild Receptionist is a fun story because all these other characters that she interacts with each have their own little side stories and adventures that allow them to become better people because of the adventure that they go on with her and the challenges that she presents to them or the challenges that she empowers them to finally face. And one thing that I really have to commend about the anime adaptation in comparison to the manga is the pacing. They covered so much material. They've actually gone beyond where the manga is currently, and yet rounded it off really, really well. All of the fluff was cut. Only the most important conversations and moments were kept in. The action was kept nice and tight. As a result, the pacing is pretty quick, but it works for this story, because this is one where if you spend too long with the gag, it becomes less and less funny. And by the last episode, some of the gags are definitely losing their appeal. But it's by the end of the season, most of the important stuff has already happened. The characters have progressed nicely. The relationships have improved and have grown and have multiplied. And you've gotten to know the cast of characters and you've gotten to know the world better. And so you're left feeling satisfied. You were introduced ultimately to a gag of, oh, these adventures just aren't doing enough. And I'm saddled with all this paperwork. Fine, I'm going to use my OP powers. I'm going to clear the dungeon. It was a joke, but it was a joke that was spun out to become a really fun adventure with engaging, interesting characters, despite the OP powers mixed on in. And this is where, if you take a trope and you come to understand what it is, you can do some amazing things with it. Tropes aren't bad. We all use tropes. Tropes are just the gears or the pieces of the story. And you as an author are trying to basically build a clock, figuring out all the different gears and mechanisms that go together in order to build your clock the way that you want it to be. And if you want to have an OP character, an overpowered character in the mix, that's absolutely fine. You just need to figure out how that gear meshes perfectly with all the others to deliver an interesting story. And yes, characters can be interesting while being overpowered because of, well, what adventure did they go on to get those kinds of powers? What do they do with those powers? What are the consequences of those powers? How do other people oppose them? What kinds of challenges can they still have? That is what makes OP characters ultimately very interesting. If you focus too much on their powers, what they can then do, and the amazing stuff that they do, and how they just overcome everything with ease, then that's not really fun. Ultimately, then people start either looking to the side characters or usually to another story to find their fun and fix. An overpowered character can be interesting, just give them a proper character arc. So again, if you want to see overpowered characters done right, if you want to see tired old tropes that people just kind of shake their heads at, used in a way that's like, oh, that's actually really engaging and interesting. And if you want to make sure that you don't judge an anime by its opening, then I highly recommend checking out Guild Receptionist. I think you'll really enjoy it if you haven't already watched it this season. And now that it's all out, you can binge it and enjoy everything within a day and move on with your merry way. And hopefully you will have learned something interesting about how overpowered characters are used and how pacing can keep things nice and tight and really make sure that story does not overstay its welcome and that the joke doesn't run dry before the end. But still, if overpowered characters are just not something that you want to read and you want to just get into a good fun adventure, a good fun fantasy, then might recommend one of my own books. You can either read Tumble-Teller or Bleed Steam and Steel. No truly overpowered characters in those stories at all, but rather engaging adventures with some very interesting individuals. I highly, highly recommend them. Links for them are in the description below. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us on this incredible adventure that we call writing, and until the next video, y'all, tschüss.